Strange? It was a strange place. Rather than calling it a place, it was better to call it a graveyard, as it looked like a land used for the disposal of bloody corpses. Plains and meadows were drenched in blood. Ravens plowed through the decaying lands, gnawing their beaks upon the corpses covering the landmass. Shipwrecks and dead bodies floated all across the oceans, dying in red. The white flakes of snow that one was familiar with had overlapped with the color of blood, forming a cemetery of frozen corpses with limbs that could be seen sticking out from the thick layer of ice. After being engulfed by terrifying disasters, the weather remained the same regardless of the season. There was no more warm sunshine for people to bask in leisurely, nor was there any drizzle that made the parched earth regain its vitality. The conditions of the entire world were terrible. It was a wintry hell where blizzards never stopped blowing, followed by showers of ashes instead of snowflakes. A huge and endless crack extended throughout the sky, around which fluctuations and ripples were spreading slowly. If one looked at the world, he would have a feeling that the world was going to plunge into dust and debris at any moment. Among the corpses, there were some battered bodies with dead and tired eyes staring towards a certain place with a hopeful gaze, wishing for him to confirm whether they won or lost. At the center of the barren and desolate world, which was reminiscent of a scorched section of hell, stood a huge pillar that seemed to pierce through the sky. Around the pillar, blood-stained ground corpses lay from which dark mist erupted. The crows roared around it while feeding on the corpses, and around the desolate barren place sat a man with bloodshot eyes leaning against the pillar. The pillar on which he leaned seemed to be the symbol of strength, and standing on something ominous that made one mind go numb in fear. Cough, cough. The man heaved out a dry cough as he opened his eyes. His vision was blurry and groggy. Witnessing the mass of destruction left behind, his expression crumpled, and at the same time he felt pain oozing out from every part of his body. His right earlobe was missing, a deep scar ran through his left eye over the face. 2 toes on his left leg were missing, and his body had been riddled with scars accumulated throughout the ages. But, as if numb to the pain, he opened his tired eyes from which drops of water started to trickle down. His throat was parched and it burned as if it was on fire. He could feel the expected gazes of dead bodies on him, but he could only swallow his saliva while questioning himself with a hoarse voice. Am I the only one left alive? Is this the end? Is this the victory we sought? A quiet and sorrowful wind blew in response to his question. He bit his lips and emotions welled in his chest, wanting to tear his chest and burst out. It was the emotion of emptiness that a person encounters when he spends his day and night achieving the desired goals but has never given a thought about what to do next. The silence coupled with the inner emptiness started to hunt him in a vast desolate place filled with a putrid odor of rotten smell. Unable to keep his eyes open, his eyelids closed due to exhaustion. Murmurs and hums echoed in his ears, giving him a piercing headache that almost split his brain. His mind, which was clouded due to exhaustion, was unable to discern whether this was real or an illusion. Just for how long can you trap me? For a decade, for a century, or for a millennium. No matter how long it takes, I will be freed one day. After all, your body is already on the verge of breaking down. A hoarse voice resounded in his ears. And once I am out, everything will be over. Everything you have done to keep me caged will be for naught. All the sacrifices you have made are meaningless. And you, who are the only one to survive, will be trapped in an endless cycle of worry and misery. 'Cause I am the end. He was still skeptical and didn't know whether he heard the voice for real or if it was just a fleeting illusion, but tears of blood started to burst from his eyes as all the memories of his suffering from his birth started to play in the loop before his eyes. His heart seemed to be ignited with rage. He clenched his fist to the point that his nails dug into his skin and blood oozed out from it. Squeezing out his remaining strength, he opened his eyes. His eyes became bloodshot and his breathing hastened as he tried to hold back his fading consciousness. If only we could have known about this. If only those bitches would have helped us instead of abandoning us. If only I have someone to rely on. Still, it's not over. It's not over and will never be. Not until I am alive. I will fix everything, even if it takes eons beyond eons. As long as I am breathing, nothing is over. I can't let their sacrifices be in vain. More than that, I can't let that person down. The man stood up with staggering steps and opened his parched lips. And for you who claims himself to be the end of this world, I will be your end. You who brought despair and misery to this beautiful world, I will be your despair. Your greatest fear and taboo that will haunt you until the end of your existence. You may be the embodiment of evil, but I am the king of all evils. I am the sovereign of evils. His voice reverberated throughout the world. His screams and declaration were accompanied by showers of thunder and lightning, showing the wrath of the heavens, and the sky split apart to the mighty aura that burst from the body. I will set everything right. That was the last thing he muttered before his image blurred, accompanied by a blinding flash before everything in the world started to crumble apart. As if being struck by a nightmare out of nowhere, the boy woke up gasping heavily. His heart skipped a beat and his eyelids fluttered. He felt suffocated and nauseated. After he woke up, his mind became blank for a moment, and panting heavily, he started to feel breathlessness. Even the pillow and blanket were drenched in sweat. His mouth stayed agape, but no voice came out of it as he was deaf. Sitting in a dazed state and looking around the room, his sight fell on the TV screen where the game Wrath of Death was displayed. The intro of the game was being played in loops as he forgot to switch off the TV connected to PlayStation. Watching a landmass filled with blood and filth, like a burst of the dam, the contents of the nightmare flooded into his mind and he felt nauseated all of a sudden. The scattered limbs and organs across the land along with the putrid smell seemed fresh in his mind. His hands seemed to be wet with blood and his vision was dyed with blood. Everything seemed to become real, which was too much for him to bear currently. His stomach churned violently and unable to take in any more, he ran towards the bathroom and took out everything in his stomach. Gastric juices accompanied by saliva and mucus came out in rapid succession. Puking out, he opened the shower and let himself soak in the drops of water splattering over his body, which calmed his tensed nerves. He took a deep breath as the water trickled down from his face after soaking his hair and went further down, wetting the whole dress he was wearing. The dream was quite vivid, which made it more unpleasant. Death, looming death. He muttered something as he slowly recalled the contents of the nightmare. His body shuddered in fear like a leaf swaying due to the cold wind. After composing himself, he smiled bitterly and quickly brushed off the dream. Is it a side effect of playing the horror game till late at night? It seems that I have been too engrossed in watching anime, manhwa, novels, and playing games that my brain is subconsciously picking up useless things. I should listen to my mom's advice. I swear that from today, I will stop playing horror games. I mean, I will not play games at night. By the way, who was that bastard screaming at the top of his lungs? And what the hell is Sovereign of Evil? What kind of cringe name is this? Even kids with Chiunibidu syndrome can come up with better titles. Let's forget this bastard. Remembering about that disfigured face makes me sick. Soaking himself, he picked up a towel and dried himself, changed into his bathrobe and walked out. He looked at the watch and his expression hardened. It was almost 5 a.m. There was a common superstition that the dreams which you see in the morning often come true. Though he was not a hardcore superstitious person, thinking about the dream a suffocating feeling washed over him. Hey, there is still some time, I should take a nap. The man changed his clothes and after gulping water from the bottle, he lay on the bed trying to dismiss the unpleasant nightmare while being unaware of the fact that his smooth-sailing life would soon change beyond his wildest dream. Ring. Ring. The sound of the alarm ringing again and again frustrated him. Shut the hell up, he spoke in a half-asleep state and hit the button of the alarm with a bang, turning it off. After waking up from the horrible nightmare, it was only after the sun rose did he fall asleep. All sorts of distorted scenes dyeing his vision with blood appeared in his eyes, which disturbed him greatly. The nightmare messed up his mind to the point that it took him a while to calm himself down. Taking a short nap for a few more minutes, he heard a scream from outside his room. Son, wake up quickly, it's already 8:45. You are going to be late for the train. Mom, 5 more minutes, please, he uttered groggily and went back to sleep again. After 5 minutes, he heard another loud shout much fiercer than before and his reply was the same as the previous time. Digging his face into the soft pillow, he submitted himself to the warmth and drowsiness while unaware of the looming dark shadow that was drawing near him. Son. Yes, Mom. He replied nonchalantly, but his eyes opened as he felt a chill going down his spine. Did you stay awake till late at night playing games? Before the boy could answer, the blanket that he wore was suddenly pulled away with a great force, which also pulled him down from the bed and he slammed on the floor. His eyes opened wide and with a surge of anger, he roared like a wounded beast. Who hell? Hey, Mom, what's up? Choking up in between, his tone became gentle and soft. His mind was jolted awake seeing the demoness form of his mother, he meant his mom, glaring at him with a foul expression. Mom, why did you wake me like this? His mom smiled and pointed at the watch. He tilted his gaze at the watch and his expression distorted as he saw the time. Kayak. He jumped up and screamed in panic seeing that only 37 minutes left until 9:30. Without further ado, he rushed towards the bathroom to finish the nature calls and freshen up. Vanessa looked around and clicked her tongue in annoyance and walked out, slamming the door loudly. In the hallway, a man sat at the dining table and read the newspaper with a leisurely look. He put it down and then looked at the news playing on TV. An unknown group that caused the train accident last month are still on the run. Police found some clues after searching them. The gangs are pulling out the tracks causing the train to go off tracks last month, and yesterday, the police found a set of missing tracks. Seeing the severity of the situation, the case had been handed over to special forces. A petition is sent to Railway Minister to form a special team to check the tracks to avoid accidents. Switch. The TV was switched off suddenly. Who turned it off? He spoke angrily. The man rotated his gaze and swallowed his saliva. Beads of sweat trickled from his forehead. Honey, who pissed you now? You. Vanessa's anger flared up seeing a package beside her husband. She walked towards the table and picked up the knife, sliced the bread and started to put butter in it while speaking in irritation. After he goes out today, I will burn his entire stock of novels and games. If I don't do something, he will waste his youth on these useless things instead of studying. Cough, cough. Leonard tried to appease his wife's anger and said, Honey, Don't let your anger get into your head. He is just 20. He has years ahead. Let him enjoy it a bit. After all, you have to sell your freedom as dowry when marrying a woman. That's what he wanted to say, but he did not have the guts to say this. At least he is reading some. Thud. Leonard shut his lips as the knife stabbed the piece of butter and the temperature around him suddenly froze. Dear, did you want to ruin your son and turn him into someone like you who just lazes around? I don't want him to grow up into a good-for-nothing like you. Leonard wanted to refute her claims, but he kept his mouth shut because he feared losing something important if he opened his lips now. Creak. The awkward atmosphere lingering between them was broken by their son. Leonard's words struck in his throat as he stared at his son in disbelief. 2 huge dark circles covered his eyes, giving him a panda look. The tie he wore wasn't tied properly and his shirt was half tucked in, giving him the look of those so-called bullies. His expression looked quite serious, which made him wonder whether this son of his was going to college to study or to fight with someone. Vanessa shot Leonard a glare and muttered softly, like father like son. Giving her husband an earful, she asked, did you even sleep last night or waste the entire night doing something useless? The boy who was subjected to the acquisition grumbled and said, I slept at 1 but I had a very terrifying nightmare last night. The boy's expression darkened and his eyes became lifeless, which caught his parents off guard. I am not feeling well today. His whole body shuddered a bit as the scene of corpses appeared in his mind again. The dream was so vivid and horrifying that every time I thought about it, my stomach churned up. He spoke and closed his eyes while inhaling heavily to clear his mind. In a normal situation, Vanessa would have already started scolding him, but her heart ached unknowingly seeing her son like this. He seriously looked unwell. Son, if you aren't feeling well, you can take off. No need to push yourself. Roy shook his head and said, no, I am okay. Vanessa stared at him with a softened gaze and stepping forward rubbed Roy's hair with a soft smile. N////I/N. You are already 20 and it's time for you to do something meaningful. How long are you going to be stuck in your room? All the novels you read, all the anime you watch and all the games you are playing are nothing but a way to fill the emptiness in your heart. You are getting farther and farther away from reality by immersing yourself in them. So try to take a break and spend some time outside playing with your friends. Mom, it's not that. He tries to refute this with a flustered expression. Do you think you can hide this from me? Who doesn't want an ideal life? Who doesn't want to live as a hero with lots of money, getting respect from all around? Everyone dreams to lead an ideal life like that. At first it just starts as a hobby for enjoyment, but soon people found themselves deeply enthralled by it and think of themselves as living the life of the character because they found a part of themselves in that character who could do the things which they could never dare to do. A life that they deem as ideal. Hope and dreams are beautiful things if only they are fulfilled. Otherwise, the same things that fill you with zeal and happiness today, will turn into a poison that will kill you slowly in agony. If you don't want to be trapped in such a fantasy and dream, it's time to do something meaningful so that at least some who stay with you, may remember you and your deed. It's time for you to stand up and become a proper man. His mom's words resounded in his ears like loops. Everything she said was correct and it struck straight in his heart. He knew that deep within his heart, but he was too embarrassed to accept it. Maybe it was his ego that was still refuting, trying to save a bit of pride from the so-called otaku. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say that we just do it for fun, even though this fun sometimes extends from a few hours to most of the day like a sweet addictive poison. With an embarrassed expression, he shook away his mom's hands and spoke while averting her gaze. It's getting late. I will eat something in the college. He spoke and was about to leave when he heard his father's call. Leonard pushed the package towards him and said, I have a gift for you. Roy, who was in no mood to open it now, just picked it up and said, I will take a look on the way. With a few simple words, he headed out. Unbeknownst to him, this would be the moment that he would regret greatly when he looks back. Vanessa stared at her husband's desolate expression. What was in it? It's a novel that was released recently which he wanted so much. I was able to get my hands on a copy. It just had 10,000 copies till now and it took me a bit of effort to get it. You dare to give him another stupid book? Vanessa felt her blood boil seeing her husband giving her son something stupid again. If you put that much effort in somewhere else or spend some time with him, our son might have been different. Vanessa wanted to beat her husband but stopped seeing his remorseful look. You don't need to look sad. Mark my words, once he opens it, he will jump out of joy. Vanessa sighed, trying to calm herself. You will surely see the reaction that you were expecting when he returns. Vanessa comforted Leonard and patted his shoulder. Leonard nodded, but he didn't know why there was an uneasy feeling in his heart. His heart suddenly felt empty, as if he would lose something. Something more precious than anything in the world. He switched on the TV to divert his attention. Damn it! Why are you playing the same news in the loop? A sigh escaped from his lips as he walked through the empty lane with a heavy heart. His arms holding the small package unknowingly felt heavy for some reason. Various emotions flashed in his eyes as he looked at it. He knew that his father might have been expecting to see a joyful expression on his face as soon as he gave him the package, however, he was too stressed at the moment to react. My dull reactions must have hurt him. I should have at least pretended to be happy. Sigh. I should thank him for this wonderful gift in the evening. Truthfully, he didn't want to go to college today, but he was afraid. Afraid of being alone. It might sound like a joke that a grown-up man is afraid after just a simple nightmare, but the nightmare seems to be etched in his mind, and no matter what he does, it is not going out of his mind. Currently, he is really afraid of the sickening nightmare that was haunting him. It wasn't the first time he had a nightmare. Everyone goes through countless bad dreams that agitate everyone greatly. He was also one of them, and he had gone through many nightmares previously. He had dreamed of falling off a cliff, he had dreamt of getting hit by a truck, and similarly, he had dreams that were worse enough to wipe off his sleep, but he never had such a dream which had messed up his mind. When he opens the tap, instead of water he feels blood coming out of it. When he saw breakfast, he saw clumps of rotten meat stuffed on the plate. When he looked at glass water, instead of water there would be blood on it. When he passed through garbage dumps, he would have the illusion of bodies piled up above one after another. His feet become heavy and he seems to sink deep into an endless abyss, and corpses seem to be all around him. Sickening and weird scenes like this were overlapping his sight if he let his mind wander even for a moment. Instead of suffocating yourself by staying alone, it's better to go to college and mingle with your friend. Once his mind was occupied, he was sure that all this would be over. I guess, I should look for a doctor if this sickening feeling does not stop. Beep, beep. He walked into the train with just 1 minute remaining before its departure. Finding a seat, he slumped down on the couch comfortably and looked at the outside scenery, trying to relax, but he was interrupted by a soft voice beside him. Is this a book? Hey! Roy stared at the man in disbelief. With a bewildered expression, he turned his head to the other side and asked, "How did you know, N.O.N.?" Beside him sat a man who seemed to be in his 40s and had a gentle smile on his face. Sticker. There is an ISBN on it, and being an author myself, I felt the package looked familiar. Roy felt exasperated for a moment as a stranger was conversing with him out of nowhere. Not wanting to sound rude, Roy replied with a smile, "It's a gift from my father. I was in a hurry so I wasn't able to open it." "Why don't you open it now?" "I also wanted to buy it, but I wasn't able to get my hands on it due to limited sales." Roy squinted at the man while wondering what kind of book was this. He was sure that his father wouldn't give him his favorite type of novel. Most of the books he got as gifts were an encyclopedia and books of other people's biography and a mental exercise test book. His curiosity got the better of him and he unwrapped the package. Inside the package was a book with a golden cover that reflected the golden rays of the sun. Roy's eyes scanned the book and his eyes struck at the title of the book. Dawn of Legend Volume 2. He closed his mouth with his hands to stop himself from screaming out due to excitation. It was his favorite book. Volume 1 of this was released a year ago. Volume 1 was a hit, so they decided to print 10,000 limited hard copies. The web novel version was going to release next week. The happiness of getting the book outclassed all the negative emotions he had. His mood, which was at the bottom of the pit, rose straight towards heaven. "Oh, my God! Dad, you made my day! Ha ha ha! You are trying too hard to suppress your excitement." Roy heard a chuckle from the old man beside him, who patted his shoulder. The train stopped and the man stood up, hearing the announcement. "My station has arrived. Young man, you have a rough journey ahead. I hope you can face the ordeals. Good luck." The old man stood up and walked back with an uncanny expression. Roy wanted to say something hearing the odd words, but he was only able to say thank you. He wanted to ask what the man meant, but the man had already run away. What a weird man. Maybe he is talking about the contents of the book. Is the ending too hard to swallow? Did the author pull out some kind of shit? Roy muttered, wondering about the man's words. Roy spoke and shrugged his shoulders and opened his book. He had felt a bit better and seemed to get rid of the sickening emotion after sitting on the train, and to further distract himself, he decided to dig into the book right now. He opened the cover on the first page and read the words on it. This book is dedicated to those who had threaded through the path of darkness and lit up the path for others at the cost of their life. Isn't this too heavy to put on the first page? Roy's heart surged with an uncanny emotion after reading this. He skimmed the next page only to be mortified. His lips opened wide and his jaw almost dropped onto the ground. What? How? Roy's hands trembled as he saw the blank page one after another, and as he skimmed through the entire book, his expression turned worse. Bloody bastard! Is this a joke? How the hell did a blank book go unnoticed? Is this a scam? Roy cursed the scammer and his heart ached on seeing the $9.99 price dollar tag on the unwrapped foil. Roy felt as if he had been betrayed and his emotions were cheated. Father might go over the publishing company head after knowing that he was scammed. He looked out and saw the wide river channel on which the train was passing. Roy gritted his teeth and was about to throw the book to the side when the train jerked. Kayak. He groaned as he was thrown off balance, causing his head to hit the side. The compartment jolted and tumbled. A huge explosion shook the train wildly. The cabin shook and the train running on the railroad staggered sideways. Roy held onto the handles of his seat in one hand and wrapped his other on the rail bar of the window strongly to balance his body, but the force that yanked him was too much. As he wondered what was going on, his eyes widened as the entire compartment was thrown upside down, and before he could know what was going on, another compartment came crashing down onto them. The loud screeching noise almost burst his eardrum and his vision was blinded for a moment. Boom! Splinters of metal were flung and tossed around as some compartments of the train burst due to the collision while some were squeezed. Flames started to run rampant all around, and a cacophony of shrieks and screams filled with sorrow echoed throughout the place, followed by chaos. The train derailed from the track, causing an unfortunate accident and shrouding the entire area with darkish smoke rising towards the sky. In the midst of all this, compartments rolled over one another and collided one after another. And to make the matter worse, all of this happened when the train was over the bridge crossing through a narrow river canal. Some of the compartments broke through the coupling and broke through the bridge side framework and fell into the river. After a few moments, everything came to standstill. People who were alive and able to maintain their consciousness tried to get out of the compartments and move away. Cement, dust, and concrete fragments mixed, muddling everyone's visions. The bridge might fall. We should get out of here. A man shouted as he came out and saw large cracks at the edges of the bridge and a few compartments that had already fallen and pulled over the others. They gasped in fear as they saw the scene. How do we get out? The compartments are blocking this side while the other end of the bridge has been broken. Do we have to jump down into the river? But I don't know how to swim. More people came out with tears, dust, and blood staining their faces. And among them, a young man in his early 20s staggered and fell. Through the broken window slits, he struggled his way out. His vision was blurry and he felt a cool sensation over his head as blood trickled down from his head. He scanned around and saw a tense atmosphere. Fortunately, the bridge had 2 tracks and was quite wide, which allowed the train to stop after being dragged for a bit. The driver must have stepped on the brake, noticing the anomaly from before. Because of the driver's cautiousness, they were alive for now. However, the engine compartments and a few others at the front were unlucky and broke through the suspensor, and the deck fell into the river, causing a loud blast. Although it was unfortunate for them, however, due to this the bridge was at least standing, because if the engine exploded on the bridge, who knew what could have happened? Twisting his body, he leaned on the crushed compartment and took out the bottle, took a few sips to revitalize himself and clear away his muddiness. He could hear gentle vibrations inside the compartment. There were still people squeezed in there. His ear, which had become numb for a moment, started to fill up with shrieks and cries. He could hear moans and sobs from inside the compartment, however he was too injured to help them. He thanked his luck for getting the window sit, which allowed him to get out first. However, seeing water, the people who were around him felt thirsty and moved towards him. "Child, can you please let me have a sip? God will bless you." Roy had no qualms about it, as he had another 2 stored in his backpack. As the man came closer, tremble. The ground shook as people started to come closer. "Stop! Don't come here! It's breaking down!" Their hearts started to thump wildly. It was at that moment, a man stumbled forward. It was an insignificant scene, but as the man slammed into the cabin, the ground suddenly shook once more. Roy and the rest could barely hold on to their wits when their hopes along with their lives came crashing down. The cable suspensor against which the group of cabins supported themselves broke and slid down the bridge. Screech! Rumble, rumble, rumble. Roy, who was supporting the body against the cabin, felt his heart come out of his throat, and reacting to the emergency, he sprang forward to avoid being hit, in case the cabin rolled or the ground under them broke. Unfortunately, his shirt was tucked onto the railing beside the window and his body was pulled. The ground under them broke and many people fell, where some were saved by others. The others who were watching the scene were left horrified, but letting out a shriek jumped back in fear. "Ah, ha!" With loud cries along with a grunt of pain, several cabins fall into the river. However, amidst all this, Roy was able to land safely in the river as he fell after the compartments fell. Amid the fall, he tore away his shirt, which avoided him from being pulled down by the heavy compartments. The river had a depth of around 2 to 3 meters, as one could see the pieces of debris floating all around. Roy was a novice when it comes to swimming, however, with scraps floating all around, he just needed to hold onto them and wait for the rescue team. His heart was beating frantically and his body was trembling violently due to fear. However, his adrenaline kept him from losing himself and helped him to react quickly. Damn! What the hell? Roy bit his lips. He wanted to curse his luck but stopped. He felt that at least he was lucky to be alive. Is this what it feels like to have plot armor? Thank God for sparing this lamb. In a way, it was way better and safer to be in this situation rather than to be struck up on the bridge, which could fall off any moment. Since it was a river that flows through the city, there were no sharks nor was there any threat from dangerous sea creatures. Roy sighed in relief, and just when he thought of thanking God again for having mercy on him, something fell over him and blinded his vision. Bang! A metallic arch of the bridge fell over him and hit Roy's head, sinking him to the river floor. As he hit the bottom, he touched something. The blood trickling from the bloodied figure was sucked down by something which started to emit a golden austere. If Roy saw the scene he would have jumped in fright. Bloody hell, how did this book come here? It was the same book his father had gifted him today. The book was opened and pages skimmed one after another, followed by heavy gusts of wind after a few drops of blood fell over it. A small whirlpool was created which engulfed Roy. The book, which was soaked in blood, suddenly glowed with golden austere, enveloping Roy's whole body in dazzlingly bright light. Hey. My head hurts so much. My throat feels dry and my body feels hot. Pitch darkness enveloped him from all around. A murky and dark world filled with murmurs was instantly shattered. The eyes of the sleepy Roy opened up as he felt an abnormal throbbing pain in his head, as if he had been bashed in his head with a club repeatedly. In his stupor, he tried to move his head, but he was unable to look around, as if he had lost the power to move his head and limbs. His eyes were hazy and everything around him seemed to be blurry and dark. What is going on? I feel as if I am in a half-asleep state. I can think, however I am not able to perceive my surroundings. Still in his reverie, he attempted to focus his mind and found his thoughts were difficult to control. His mind was unable to focus on things and started to flee apart with random thoughts. Why am I in this state and what is this pain? The last thing I remember was something falling over me, so what is happening now? And what is this pain? It is really painful. Did I have a cerebral hemorrhage or did I fall into a coma? Am I now treated in the hospital? While myriads of emotions flashed in his mind, unknowingly the pain in his mind started to subside. And abruptly his mind felt cool and relaxed. What the hell is going on? Roy, who could perceive the change in his mental state, finally broke out of his reverie. His murky vision dispersed and a dark fabric greenish ceiling appeared in his vision. Roy, who was just trying to discern it, was suddenly startled by the appearance of a blue screen which shocked him greatly. His eyes widened as he scanned the contents of the screen displayed before him. Status shop locked. Name, Lucas Bright. Species human. Bloodline grade bronze. Level, 1 star. Compatibility G. Strength, 1 star. Agility, 1 star. Stamina 1 star. Perception, 1 star. Magic power, 1 star. Stat points, 2. EXP, 0. Profession. Swordsmanship level, beginner. Skills? None. Arts? None. Bloodline ability locked. A series of words and numbers appeared before his eyes. Roy, who was taken by surprise, for a moment thought that maybe he was just dreaming or this might be his illusion, just like yesterday's nightmare. Roy felt the feeling of being able to move his body once again and raised his hands towards it, however his hands went past the intangible screen. He moved his hands around making all types of weird motions, however the screen remained in his sight. What is going on? And Lucas, who is he? Roy muttered faintly and got up to look around. Everything around him was a bit dark and he found himself in a soft and comfortable sleeping bag. There was a dimly lit lamp beside him and his eyes slowly adapted to the atmosphere. Rustle. His hands touched some kind of soft fabric sheets. Silence. For a moment, except for the sound of his breath, other noises ceased to exist. It took a moment to realize where he was. I am in a tent. Flaps were sewn on the entrance acting as the door. He looked around the space and the virtual followed his eyesight. Through the obscure screen, he found a backpack beside the sleeping bag. I am going mad. What the hell is this screen? Is it a system like those in games? Roy muttered with a panicked tone. He inhaled deeply to calm himself. He closed his eyes and regained his composure. He thought the screen might have disappeared once he opened his eyes, however. The virtual screen was still before his eyes. Roy looked at the screen, particularly at the name, and repeated it. Lucas, Lucas, Lucas. Oddly, the name felt familiar, as if he knew about the person. As he muttered the name, an excruciating pain assaulted his brain which caused him to hold his head and crouch down on the ground. The throbbing pain seemed to split apart his head. Ah! He groaned in pain and tried to get up, but he stammered in his steps and fell back on his butt and screamed while his body wriggled like a maggot. Mist, City, Misful, Ivani, Horizon, Academy, 3 days. A series of broken murmurs leaked from his lips as Roy wriggled in pain and lost his vision for a moment again. After a series of outbursts, the pain resided and Roy regained his consciousness. His eyes opened wide and his body jolted in shock. Cold sweat covered his forehead and he covered his face with a stunned expression. Dawn of Legend. No, it cannot be. I need to check. He remembered the backpack he saw just a minute ago. Roy muttered and his body lunged towards the backpack. He opened the chain and started to draw out the things in it. The first thing he noticed was a dagger and a small vial of healing potion. He put it aside and looked for other things. A packet of food, a steel water bottle, a few sets of clothes out of which two seemed to be some kind of uniform, a flashlight, and a smartphone, and then he found a watch. He clicked the side dial and the display screen opened asking for the password. Password, password. My memories of this guy are still blurry. I can't remember the password. There might be another way. Roy muttered and then slid the screen and the lock screen changed from password to finger scan. He presses his thumb on it hoping for the watch to open. With the soft ring, the watch opened. The screen finally confirmed Roy's suspicion. Equals. User ID Lucas Bright. Status first year. Age 17. Class? First year. Rank 2209. Horizon. It's real. Roy slumped back on the ground with a hollow look, still finding it hard to believe. From the bits of memories and seeing the name of the academy, he inferred that he somehow ended up in the world of Dawn of Legend. A world filled with myths and legends. You can find all types of fantasy settings and creatures here. The main plot of the book follows the tales of Frederick Frost, the legendary spearman who fought against all odds, foiling the plans of demons who wanted to devour the whole. In a way, you can say that the main plot was centered around the fight between the world and demon. Thousands of years ago, a catastrophic war broke out due to the invasion of demons. All the species allied to form a united battlefront against the demons, and countless world-shattering battles took place to repel the demons. During the last battle, Demon King fought with everything, and the devastation of such a battle caused the world to undergo many changes. At the end of the battle, the Demon King and Martial Saint were gravely injured. Demon King, seeing himself losing the fight against the Martial Saint, who was designated as the head of allied forces, used some of his power to separate the demon continent into a separate realm, moving it to a new plane below the world. In the end, the demon realm was separated and the demons hid in the dark space while peace and serenity returned. The Martial Saint was gravely injured and was in the last thread of his life, so he gave up on pursuing Demon King and decided to dedicate his life to the betterment of the next generation. Meanwhile, Demon King used some forbidden arts to seal his life while passing his will in a way to resurrect him. It was written in the background of the novel and not many knew about all of this. However, this was not the end. When demons retreated, the demonkin such as Beastman, vampires, and various monster races form a coalition engaging in constant war against humans. The protagonist of the story is Frederick Frost, who is the son of Duke Frost, whose fate changed because of a fortuitous encounter with the spear, the Doom Piercer. However, there was something else that attracted the attention of everyone. On the last page of Volume 1, there was the sentence. Hiding under the veil of darkness, the harbinger of destruction pushes the world towards nothingness. Many experts guessed that this might be hinting at the contents of the Volume 2. Roy, who was thinking about all of this, suddenly shook his head to stop his thoughts from running all over. Damn, instead of thinking about all of this, I should solve the primary problems first. Before wasting his time thinking about all the troublesome things in the world, he needs to find out more about his situation, which begins with how to close this damn screen. Roy observed the screen while trying to discern the perks of his so-called system. He tried to search for the description of the screen from the knowledge of the book. As far as he remembered, in the book everyone could check their stats with the help of the divine mirror in the temple. There was a person who wanted to measure all his stats, however he was unable to do so. With eyes and senses, you can discern a person's strength, but you cannot figure out all his particular stats. Naturally, you can undergo tests to estimate all this, however it would be cumbersome to test out all this. The problem was solved by Goddess. He got a revelation according to which a certain kind of mirror made of some special materials after being blessed by Goddess Rebecca would reflect a person's characteristics. You just need to stand before the mirror, which will reflect the status similar to the screen along with your image. However, contrary to the novel system, Roy found that the screen contains some additional things. EXP, stat points, and shop. Except this, every other thing remained the same. He thought that this might be his transmigration perks, which he still find unbelievable. But how do I turn it off? Roy muttered as it was quite frustrating to see the screen moving around with his gaze. System shut down. System disappear. System off. Roy clasped his hair and wondered what kind of crisis he encountered on his first day. There had never been any mention of this in any kind of system novels he read. Do I have to live with this screen flashing before my eyes? It's frustrating and interfering with my vision. If the protagonist from other novels saw him struggling to turn down the system like this, they would die laughing. Roy cursed and attempted to calm himself. Roy, the hoarder of knowledge of countless novels, searched for a way from in mind. An idea finally struck his mind. Instead of issuing commands, he closed his eyes, trying to see the system with his eyes closed. He imagined a system appearing before the dark. He delved deeper and finally, his concentration reached its peak. In front of the dark space, a blur screen started to materialize. I see. Let's repeat this process to turn it off, Roy murmured and started to think of the system disappearing in his mind. In. The system disappeared into the dark space, and as he opened his eyes to his surprise, the system had disappeared from his sight. He tried this a few more times and succeeded. He was about to leap in joy when he heard a loud crackling noise of thunder, causing him to tremble in fear. Roy walked outside, and the scene that unfolded before he startled him. Red clouds covered the sky. Thunders were roaring. An endless wilderness greeted his sight, which horrified him. Unknown fears started to creep into his mind suddenly. It was only then that he felt that something was wrong. He had been too calm. Someone like him who had died and come to this new world, his mind had been surprisingly stable. Maybe it was because his mind was preoccupied with the thoughts of the novel world and system. Or maybe his mind was influenced by the previous owner, for whom this might be natural. But now that the realization struck him, his eyes started to tear up. Mother. Father. My friends. I could never see them again. The scene of his mother nagging and his father's smile appeared in his eyes. Various scenes of his past 20 years appeared before his eyes. The more he thought about it, the more empty his heart became. His heart felt suffocated, and even though strong gales were surging, the air felt stagnant. The tiny bit of reason and calmness he had, disappeared instantly. Instead of being transmigrated, he felt as if his parents died, leaving him alone, and he was not even able to take a look at their graves. Guilt started to well up inside him as he thought about today's morning, when he had not even properly greeted them and left them with a stuffy feeling. It was a scene that he knew would haunt him. Drip, 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 drip. With the sound of thunder, the rain started to pour, soaking Roy's clothes. Roy stood there with a blank expression and did not know whether his cheeks were wet due to the rain or due to tears that were forced out of his eyes filled with sadness and regret. A notebook was flipped, and an old man with dark bluish eyes locked onto 4 thick books which he had written throughout his whole life. Each notebook contained vivid descriptions of historical records of the phases which the world had gone through since its creation. Book 1, The Era of Creation. It was said that a limitless space filled with nothingness went on for an unknown period. No one knows how a speck of light was born in the vast space of endless void that took the shape of an existence that was later referred to as the God. The omniscient and omnipresent God. It was said that fleeting through the vast and empty place gave him a sense of forlornness and boredom, which led him to do something that changed the vast void. That begins the era of creation. He pulled out his eyes to dispel the darkness. One became the sun, which lighted the world during the day, and the other one became the moon, which shared a tiny amount of light at night to stop the world from descending into total darkness. His sweat formed vast water bodies. His body parts gave the world its shape, and the contents of the blood gave birth to various kinds of beings who gained sentiment and started to evolve to turn into the current living organism inhabitants of the world. No one knows whether this was true or some sort of myth or superstition. However, the search for the truth never ceased. Book 2, The Era of Progression. After creation came progression. The primordial living beings that came to life faced a series of crises and catastrophes. The natural calamities forced living things to change and evolve their thinking. When living beings that were created faced the risk of extinction, gods and goddess materialized who inherited the Creator's knowledge and guided the living beings into salvation. It was during this period that the use of mana to strengthen the body and various arts and crafts for survival started to blossom. N/N. By the end of the era, supported by different gods, various factions rose that formed settlements, giving rise to various types of civilization. Demons who were imbued with strong physiques backed by the demon god. Elves who were born with great natural affinities and superior mana control and worshipped Mother Nature. Dwarves who had inherited the knowledge of crafting became excellent in craftsmanship under the goddess of wisdom and god of blacksmith help. Humans who might look weakest among the bunch but had the greatest potential to develop quickly among others were also supported by various gods and goddesses and were especially under goddess Rebecca's protection, who is considered one of the strongest gods. There were various other great species like dragons which almost became extinct due to their low birth rate, vampires which are subspecies of humans and demons, orcs, beastmen having the characteristic of both human and beast, and various kinds of monster species. Everything was proceeding smoothly, however rapid progress led to clashes of beliefs and ideologies. But more than that, there was a clash of greed. Greed and arrogance often cause one to lose sight. Ambition to challenge the gods and goddesses and become one to rule the world ran amok in everyone. And this began the third era, the era of conquest. Before challenging gods, every species tried to hoard all the resources by plundering, killing, and massacring each other. Occasional fights broke out between nations. Some fights even disrupted reality, while some even changed the landscape of the whole world. In the end, the final clash was between the allied forces of humans, elves, and dwarves and the coalition of demons and other monster species. It would be wrong if one accuses demon of all this, as everyone was responsible for this. It is always the survival of fittest, and strength was what matters the most, so each species had its right to fight for the resources. However, the Demon King took things a bit far and committed a taboo. It was said, the Demon King received help from the demon god or an unknown source which boosted his power, which was quite weird as he was the one who wanted to throw away the gods more than anyone else. Both sides were equally matched, and the outcome was left in the hands of the Demon King and Martial Saint, who was chosen as the hero by the goddess to stop all this farce. The end battle brought forth a terrific disaster, causing the world to split into two realms, forming planes one after another. Due to this, another bizarre phenomenon occurred. The appearance of dungeons. The mini-pocket dimension that seems to be the whole world in itself starts to appear abruptly. The world, which had not even recovered from the crisis of war, faced another unprecedented scenario. Dungeons appeared out of nowhere and monsters broke out from them and slaughtered everyone in sight. And the bunch which bore the brunt of this misfortune were unawakened. Not everyone was born with the ability to sense and manipulate mana. And the ability to awaken was quite low in humans compared to other species. Even if you become awakened, it is difficult to procure means and resources. On top of that, humans faced severe limiting factors due to the aspect of bloodlines. And this led to the beginning of people's search for ways to protect themselves, which led to the fourth era. Book 4, The Era of Technology. Necessity is the mother of invention. It was a quote by a famous scientist who began reformation and revolution by developing safety gears and gadgets. Transportation was invented to travel long distances, and telegrams and later telephones were invented to send statements immediately. Gears, guns, cannons, and artillery were made, which provided common people with a chance to protect themselves from low-level dangers. Rapid development through years of research from all around finally stabilized the situation, giving people without powers the fresh air of relief. Although all these were useless in face of true power, still their importance cannot be ignored. The advancement of technology also helped the awakened, who form the backbone of society, like an alchemist, blacksmiths, informants, and mostly the doctors and surgeons who treat people that cannot afford potions or healing magic from the church. With the demon realm being separated, the martial saint dedicated his remaining for everyone's betterment. Ambitious people who try to defy gods were cut short, and peace was finally restored in the whole world. However, this was where an anomaly appeared. The old man's blue eyes looked at 4 stacks of books and looked at the current book. The book represents the current era, and it should be named as Era of Peace. However, due to some reason, he was not able to. Instead of a pen, his hand held a classical feather quill. The quill looked quite ordinary, but if observed closely, one could notice a faint golden shine on the feather top of it, which was emanating a mystical feeling. The quill was a plucked feather of the highest-ranking angel. It was a sacred artifact where the user would get the knowledge of the past, present and future to narrate the event and glimpse a part of fate. This was a legendary rank artifact. However, he could only access the information which was allowed by the world. It cannot help him discern something taboo or forbidden by the gods. The ink used for this was the user's life itself. And according to the quill, the name of the current era is Calamity. Currently, there had been only 2 pages with nothing worthwhile, and no matter how hard he tried, this quill never moved again after starting 2 pages. There was only a single line that interested him before, which was: the legendary spearman had been born. The person who would change the perspective of battle weapons would stand at the forefront to face Calamity. But since he had lost his interest in fights and battle, it did not rouse his interest. However, the word Calamity was a matter of concern for him. Although he had been in seclusion, he still needed to fulfill his role. He was dying of curiosity to know what was going to happen. Every day he would hold the quill and press it on the paper, but nothing would happen. But today, when he held it, the quill started to twirl in the air and vibrate rapidly. It was a sign of some major occurrence that was going to happen. After his life was sucked in by the quill, like being controlled by invisible strings of fate, the quill finally moved. Countless strings of fate had intertwined, and the future had become murky suddenly. The world needs him. However, it does not permit his existence. Death would always look for him. If he dies, the world's existence might be in peril. However, if he manages to survive, they will face Calamity. The quill stopped writing, however the hands holding it trembled. His eyes opened wide, and a tingling, ominous sensation was followed by thousands of whispers that echoed in his brain. A severe backlash hit him, causing him to cough blood. Cough, cough, cough. He stood up and wiped out the blood from his lips and stared at the words with disbelief. In all his life, he had never seen confusing words like this. Rather than an event of history, it looked more like a vague prophecy. Who is this person? What calamity is the world going to face, and who are they referred to? And what are these contradictory statements? The world needs him, but it cannot tolerate its existence. Something had happened. The providence of the world seemed to have been twisted. But how did this happen? Who caused this? He repeated the sentence and dug deep, trying to understand the profound meaning and wisdom behind the words. Unable to understand any, he just looked outside the window, which was filled with heavy white mist, and muttered, "Ah, goddess, just what awaits for the poor lambs of this world." Drip, drip, drip. Rainwater splashed over the tent, sogging the soil around the tent. Fortunately, the tent was waterproof, otherwise he needed to look for a hideout at night. It was not easy for him to accept the reality that was thrown at him suddenly. Dying and transmigrating. The topic which serves as a source of entertainment yesterday became real for him out of nowhere. His heart, which was a mess, didn't let him sleep. His eyes were a bit red and puffed. Inside the tent, faint murmurs of tearing air resounded as he swung his dagger in the air, trying to familiarize himself with the dagger. If not for the rain, he would have already hurried his way toward the academy. After all, he was in the vast wilderness somewhere between the capital and Mist City. Perils lay in every corner of this world. Dungeons may appear out of nowhere and spew out monsters, and if not, the vast wilderness hoards varieties of demonic beasts who pose a threat to his life. As an awakened, the original owner may not be afraid of the wilderness, but truthfully he was scared out of his shits. Even in the original world, people die from being beaten by dogs and various wild animals who went on a rampage. He was even chased by a dog when he was a kid, which turned into a kind of trauma. Like humans, the beasts also get stronger due to the mana, and if he was unlucky to find one, he would be in trouble. On top of that, there are chances of being looted by bandits, however he should be safe from them as they would ignore him seeing his shabby appearance. And he doesn't have good stats to puff his confidence. He was unable to sleep last night, so he looked for the memory of the original owner. He did not know whether this was a mere coincidence or not. His mother's name was Vanessa and his father's name was Leonard, which was the same as his previous life. Both of his parents were mercenaries who met during a mission and fell in love while completing the mission. Since the life of mercenaries was filled with fatality and dangers, they decided to settle in one property left by his grandparents in the north when his mother became pregnant. Their son, who is now him, managed to pass the academy entrance exam surprisingly, though Roy was not able to recall it. The memory of taking the entrance exam was blank, as if he never took the exam, which made him wonder if this ploy of someone who put him in Lucas's body and erased some of his memories, or all the memories he had of his previous life, might be some kind of manipulation of someone. And if it is true, then what was the reason? Just thinking about all of this gives him chills, so he tries to shake away all these disturbing thoughts. He is alive after the accident, that's what matters the most. He was just an ordinary 20-year-old college student. He does not have any distinguishing features, nor did he have full knowledge of the future. If he remembers correctly, Book 1 roughly covers 5 to 6 years in this world. His knowledge is useful only up to this period, after which he had to rely on his own. It was a semi-modern world where technology was given as much importance as magic. Trains were a common mode of transport, however not every region was connected by railway tracks, as there were many places unsuitable to lay tracks. He was now in the Empire of Cyprus. There are 2 more empires beside it, and many small principal states joined together to form joint coalition kingdoms. After a long journey, his last station was Mist City, which is connected to the capital Ivani. However, the train to the capital was stopped due to the presence of a dungeon outbreak somewhere in the middle of the tracks. The academy would start in 3 days and all trains were stopped until further notification, so this boy decided to take a horse carriage to capital Ivani. However, hearing the costly price, he decided to walk alone. So after buying a tent, he began his journey toward capital city. He began his journey on Friday and today is Saturday. The time is 6:30 in the morning. Damn man! Did you think you stand a chance against the danger posed by wilderness just because you are in the 1-star realm? The protagonist may take on 10 1-star by himself when he was in 1-star, but are you sure you can take one? According to memory, you don't have any sword techniques. You don't even have a sword. There is only this dagger. Roy, who was now Lucas, spoke with a sigh. The original owner seems quite weird. To awaken, one needs to start training early to strengthen his body physically, after which one needs to channel mana inside his body by breathing mana through a certain technique. But there was none. There was no technique of mana breathing or channeling in the memory for him to use. The other way was for those who became mages, but from the bits of memories, the original owner was a swordsman. He tried to swing the dagger and found that the movement was quite rusty and felt unnatural. Moreover, there was a lack of coordination between his body movements and thought process. He did not know whether this was a problem with the original owner or due to transmigration, and his physique was quite bad. You could count the number of ribs by sliding the finger on the chest. I know I am nagging a lot, but when life dumps shit on you from all around, you can only curse. He muttered and stopped swinging the dagger. There are various characters in a novel. The most problematic aspect of an extra is that you never know what is going to happen to you. Most times deaths of people are mentioned without their names and were just given in numbers, so what if he is one of those unfortunate ones? The academy selects 4,000 students, but he remembered that the number of students mentioned at the beginning was less than that, which means rest were not able to make it. What if he is one of those unlucky ones who died on the way? His sorrow had been lessened a lot by crying, but this left him with a deep sense of anguish and helplessness. And that son of a bitch scammer who sold father that volume 2 of Dawn of Legend, which was completely blank. This means I know nothing of events happening in volume 2. The Dawn of Legend was a web novel and the printed book was released early. He could read it if he died a bit late. Since his name was nowhere, he was sure that he was an extra, so the only aid he had was knowledge of the novel. However, the cheats here were quite less and rare. First thing, the protagonist is a spearman while he is now a swordsman. The protagonist might have already inherited the spear, so there is nothing much he could do in that regard. Most of the swordsmanship arts were passed from generation to generation in the noble families, so he cannot opt for them. And second, there are not many cheats there to make you stronger. There were items and artifacts, but they cannot make you fundamentally stronger. You cannot always rely on them. I don't know why or how I ended up here, but I hope there is not any conspiracy behind it. The water in this world runs quite deep. With nothing to give him peace of mind, he turned towards the system to figure out something. Status shop locked. Name, Lucas Bright. Species human. Bloodline grade bronze. Realm, 1 star. Compatibility G. Strength, 1 star. Agility, 1 star. Stamina 1 star. Perception, 1 star. Magic power, 1 star. Stat points, 2. EXP, 0. Profession. Swordsmanship level, beginner. Skills. None. Arts. None. Bloodline ability locked. Lucas scanned his stats. It looked quite average and similar to one who had just awakened recently. The stamina, which had less than sign, meant that it was slightly better than normal. However, the magic power should be 1 star, so why is there a lesser sign? Unawakened don't have mana. Did this guy have trouble during awakening? I am now in the wilderness. There may be monsters from the dungeon outbreak or beasts who might be searching for prey. I have 2 stat points. I don't know how much they could increase the stat, but I don't think raising strength is plausible. No matter what, beasts or monsters in 1 star must surely have more strength than me, who had the stats of a recent awakened. Even if I encounter a speed type, their strength combined with the ferocity might make it difficult for me to deal with them. So instead of fighting them head on, it's best to avoid them as much as possible, so I think I should increase my perception and put the remaining stat into agility. I don't know about stamina. Since it is less than the standard value, who knows if the increase would be substantial. He did not know whether his thoughts were correct or not, as he was not someone who knew all about this. After all, he grew up in a town, not in some jungle, and nor did he have been taught survival skills. N-. I/N. Pondering for a moment, he put a stat point into perception and agility. He saw a change in the sign on the screens. Let's see what the deal is with the shop. He is about to click on it when an itch spreads all over his body suddenly. What the? His expression was distorted and he gritted his teeth to endure the uncomfortable feeling. He was not in any kind of pain, rather his whole body seemed to itch, making him uncomfortable. It only lasted for a moment, and then a refreshing feeling washed over his body. His mind felt cool and he felt more alive than ever. His ears perked up and the sound of rain seemed louder. His eyesight also seemed to have improved. All my senses had been improved. It might be due to the effect of perception and speed. I need to do a trial run. Lucas examined his condition and clicked on the shop. Shop. You need 500 EXP points to assess the store. 500 EXP points, Lucas mumbled, wondering how to earn experience points. As far as he knew, systems assign quests and reward points on completion, however there was no sign of any quests anywhere. Will I get experience points from killing? But aren't those points generally helpful in leveling up? But there are no levels in the interface, so is it only for buying from the shop? It is not like the systems I have read in other novels. It's different. Then the only way to become stronger and survive in the harsh world is to follow the common standard procedure and enroll in the academy. Lucas assessed his situation for a moment and thought that it was better to move out of this place as quickly as possible to avoid endangering his life. However, for that, he needed to wait for the storm to stop. 2 hours later, the sound of clattering rain stopped and the atmosphere became silent. Lucas walked out and gazed at the never-ending vast lands covered with green lush, overlapped by the gentle rays of the sun which surfaced out from the clouds. Lucas looked at the bright sun and with a resolute expression, clenched his palm tightly. Since I am lucky enough to survive and was given a chance to live again, I just have to give my all to survive in this harsh world and lead a fulfilling life. Kring, kring, kring. A warning signal rang, drawing the attention of the person who was staring at the computer screen. Getting the emergency call, the man reacted quickly and connected the walkie-talkie to his superior. Any issues? Affirmative, Captain. We have an emergency. There is an emergency signal from Sector 2040. I repeat, there is an emergency signal from Sector 2040. The man repeated his words, waiting for further confirmation. Sector 2040, the Whirlwood Forest. If I remember correctly, there was a G-rank dungeon breakout last month and we sent forces to clear the monsters. A solemn voice came from the other side. Yes, Captain. However, even after cleaning up, we have received an emergency signal from there. Is it the very place where we have received complaints about people missing or getting attacked by beasts recently? The captain asked in a sharp tone. There was a hint of displeasure in his tone, as how can a person who oversees the reports miss this kind of vital thing? His carelessness might cost many lives. No, Captain, that was another area. The man answered, sweating profusely. Captain, we have taken care of a few monsters in that area, but it seems a new one has appeared. Which team is near that place? It's Squad 4. Okay, send the location to Squad 4 and ask them to thoroughly survey the place once again after they dealt with the problem. Yes, Captain. The man ended the call and connected to Squad 4 while cursing the squad who had taken the mission previously and did not finish the cleanup properly. I hope no one dies, otherwise Captain would blame me for my incompetence in acting fast enough. The forest was instantly submerged in uncanny silence. Except for the sound of swift winds, all the noise ceased to exist at that very moment. The sunlight pierced through the clouds, illuminating the path leading to the dire wolf. Coins of different values along with many materials scattered around the place reflected the rays towards dire wolf, giving Lucas a full view of its body. Before it, Lucas looked like a mere child. The wolf had bitten a human hand that was still in its mouth. The dire wolf, as if knowing the state of Lucas's mind, sneered at him and spat the bloody hand on the ground, and with a smirk, he showed his ferocious fangs drenched in blood as if wanting to show Lucas his future. It does not look hungry, rather hunting seems to be quite amusing for him. Playing and cornering the prey seemed to be a way for it to pass time. The dire wolf did not attack but just stared at Lucas's expression without a movement and waited silently as if telling him, "Let me see what you are going to do now." It was the moment when Lucas felt the whole world come crashing down on him. Lucas took a step back, causing the dire wolf to flinch a bit. This made him sure that if he turned his back, it would pounce on him with all its speed. From TV, he had seen experts advising people not to turn their gaze away from the beast. Even if you are afraid, don't let the fear reflect on your face, but it is easier said than done. Lucas felt like his head was bursting apart due to tension. His heart was pounding and his nerves were twitching, giving him a headache. Lucas tried to ascertain the dire wolf level, but it felt blank. He was not able to tell the level. As far as he knew from the novel, one could tell the level of an opponent with a mere glance, however he could not. It had something to do with mana, but he wasn't able to sense the mana and energy flow properly. The feeling was akin to something stuck in his throat, unable to get out. If I cannot outrun the dire wolf, it will pounce on my back from behind and tear me without any mercy. I have no choice but to fight it. Although it felt like an eternity, only a few seconds had passed in reality. Countless thoughts flashed in his mind as he pulled the dagger from the right pocket with his trembling hands. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr After announcing the beginning of the fight, it took a leisurely step forward while noting Lucas's movements. On the other hand, the light in Lucas's eyes became dim. Lucas gasped heavily as his wavering eyes clashed against the direwolf's ferocious gaze along with the frazzled silence. The man was holding a dagger that looked like a toy in front of the enormous body of direwolf, which was more than 2 meters tall. Lucas clenched his dagger and pulled the shoulder straps of the backpack into his left arm to use it as a shield. Lucas knew that if he made a mistake he would die today and become the beast plaything. The human body is capable of performing many miracles. Even a normal human who has no experience can show abnormal instinctive reactions in face of danger. Evolving through countless years, humans had shown unnatural might in the face of disaster and life-threatening crises in which the emergency feedback system along with the adrenaline rush plays a great role. Lucas could feel the adrenaline rush and blood being pumped faster by the heart. Suddenly he felt a premonition. It was quite faint, but Lucas, whose concentration had reached a great height in the face of a life-threatening situation, was able to catch on to that faint feeling. As his senses screamed of danger, everything seemed to slow down in his eyes. The thick muscles of the dire wolf bulged and like an arrow released from a stretched string, its figure disappeared. Even though Lucas's eyes weren't able to keep up with the dire wolf's movements, his heightened perception came to play at the most crucial point of his life. A virtual trajectory was drawn in Lucas's eyes as if he knew from the beginning what was going to happen. At that moment, Lucas twisted his legs and sprang towards the right in the span of the moment. His eyes widened as he saw the paw passing from just a few inches away from his body. The paw missed narrowly, however it was too soon for him to be happy. N/in. A blunt shock transmitted throughout his body. It felt as if he had been hit by a shoulder tackle by a bulky person. Bang! The paw struck the ground, creating a faint shock that passed through Lucas's body, throwing him a meter away. Ah! Lucas's body rolled on the ground for a distance. He felt dizzy, but he had no time to rest. He had hardly got up on his feet when his eyes widened with horror. With his muzzle wide open, the dire wolf was right before him, wanting to take a nib. Lucas's scalp became numb and he raised his hands forward to cover himself out of instinct. KHRRRRG. The sharp canines were deeply embedded in the backpack. The fiber of the backpack was quite thick and the folded tent in it added further protection. However, Lucas felt a crushing pain in his elbow as the fangs pierced through the backpack and almost came near to his elbow. The jaw force of dire wolf was too much and a crackling sound was heard. Growling. The dire wolf roared in frustration and yanked his muzzle. Lucas, who did not have a steady foothold, was dragged on the ground like a rag doll and was on the verge of being thrown off, but his arm, which was inside the loop of shoulder straps, thwarted direwolf's plans to toss Lucas away. Growling, growling, growling. Lucas's body jerked, making him dizzy. Stop it! Lucas screamed and shot his arm holding the dagger at direwolf. He wanted to stab at the forehead, however, as his body swayed and his dagger was embedded at the back of the dire wolf neck. Lucas did not put much strength and the dagger grazed at the outer thick skin of dire wolf, which was like a scratch for it. The inflicted wound appeared to hurt its pride. Being infuriated by a lesser prey, it roared angrily and slammed its paw. Lucas's eyes widened spontaneously, and blood gushed out from his mouth. The dire wolf fangs embedded in the backpack tore the front portion, causing a series of things to scatter on the ground. Lucas's body was blown away regardless of his will and was flung onto a tree. Crash! The tree hit by Lucas shook violently. Pain coursed through Lucas's back, making his vision tremble. Lucas instinctively couched down while groaning in pain. It was just a single hit, but it was enough to make every part of his body ache. He looked down to see a claw mark on his chest, and he could see the white sternum through the scratch mark, which became blood red very quickly. Fortunately, the dire wolf did not hit him with full strength, otherwise his chest might have been torn open by the sharp claws. In the end, he still fell short. He did not know whether he was too weak or inexperienced to end up in this state. However, as he noticed two bloody eyes of death staring at him, he found it oddly comfortable, as if he had gone through this kind of situation countless times. The feeling of helplessness frustrated him greatly, and anger surged in his heart, making his mind numb. Why did he have to go through all this shit? If he was fated to die today, then why was given a second chance? To be pitted against a wild monster with a sickly, weak, pathetic body that does not even have an ounce of training is suicide, and this original owner, instead of taking a carriage to save some meager money, decided to put his life on the line. Who knows if this bastard died here in the original novel? The questions flared up his anger and clouded his sense of reason. The immense anger shook away his fear. He had already died once, and since he was going to die again, what help could this feeling of fear provide? He spat on the ground and put his hand on the trunk of the tree to support himself. Lucas raised his chin, staring directly at the dire wolf's eyes with a darkened expression, as if the fear shown in his eyes previously was just an act. You want to kill me and eat me? Lucas burst into laughter, making the beast wonder whether he had gone mad. Come and kill me. Since I am going to die pathetically, I will bring you down even if I had to bite you to death. The dire wolf, who seemed to have inherited the cunningness and sadistic nature of the human dark side, seemed quite pleasant watching the prey screaming wildly after losing his reason. Lucas, who lost his temper for a moment, attempted to calm himself. He has never felt something like this before. The tension in the atmosphere was sickening and suffocating, yet all of this seemed to be a joke in the beast's eyes. This enraged him. No matter how much he thought about it, he could not find a way to defeat the beast. From the short exchange, he could infer that the dire wolf was stronger than him, but it was not to the point that it could overwhelm him. The proof was that he could perceive and react to his attack faintly. However, even this beast could tell with a glance that he was a noob with no prior fighting experience. If he had not lost sight of the beast when his body rolled down, he could have at least avoided the attack. At that time, Lucas remembered certain advice from the wildlife expert who gives safety tips. Never show your back to the animal you are confronting, especially when it is watching you. Even a moment of carelessness is enough for them to tear you apart. Lucas shook his hand to get rid of the tingling sensation and noticed that he had lost the dagger near the dire wolf. Some things had fallen from his backpack through the front hole. His smartphone was one among them. Once he saw that, he realized many things lay around the place which he could use to distract the dire wolf. As he scanned his surroundings, he could feel his senses becoming absurdly sharp. Lucas felt as if he was seeing the world incomparable to before. He could feel the blowing of soft winds, the sound of leaves, the swaying of branches, the sound of his heartbeat, and he could also notice the twitching muscles of the dire wolf calves. His senses were sharp enough to notice even minute changes in the surroundings. It did not take long enough for him to figure out the reason behind these changes. It was just that he was slowly getting used to his heightened perception, and maybe the awakened ones normally see the world like this. It may look like an hour, but in reality, just a few seconds had passed. Naturally, the wolf did not allow the man to catch his breath. Taking advantage of Lucas's dazed state, the dire wolf rushed at him with high speed. Lucas reacted immediately. Even if his backpack had been torn, the steel bottle was still there in the water bottle pocket at the side, which he pulled out quickly. With its jaws wide open and its paws stretched, the dire wolf pounced on Lucas. Lucas rotated the bottle and swung the bottom of the bottle at the incoming dire wolf. It was an instinctive reaction, almost like a spinal reflex that did not need to get a signal from the brain. Lucas twisted and swayed away his left flank where the paw was aiming while trying to smash the bottle at the dire wolf's jaw. Clang! A clanging sound was heard as the bottle went right into the depth of the wolf's jaws. When the speed of the attacks countered the acceleration of the dire wolf, it amplified the normal reaction. With a clatter, a small whitish grain flew due to the clash, causing the dire wolf's jaw to tilt sideways while spraying saliva over Lucas's face. The sharp claws of the paw struck the trunk of the tree, scattering a few chips of wood. Lucas pulled the bottle back and hit the snout of the wolf, which was right before him. Howl! The dire wolf bellowed in agony as a few drops of blood dripped from its nose. Whether it's human or other mammalic animals, the nose is a soft spot for both. It would have been nice if Lucas had the strength to knock it down with a few hits, but the dire wolf, whose strength was incomparable to Lucas, just tilted his head sideways while writhing in excruciating pain and agony, causing him to back away. Lucas immediately took the opportunity and ran towards the place where his dagger had fallen while thanking his water bottle for holding on. He did not know what material it was made of, but it survived the brutal onslaught with a heavy dent. The dire wolf was a formidable opponent and charged at Lucas. Lucas could feel the dire wolf closing on him as if he had eyes on his back, causing him to stride forward as fast as possible. Reaching near, Lucas leapt forward and picked up the dagger with a roll and swung the dagger. While picking up the dagger, he embedded his hand onto the soil and tossed away a layer of dirt towards his back. The faint dust cloud with particles of soil blinded the dire wolf's vision, softening its attack power. Clang! The dagger blade and the dire wolf claws crashed, and the beast instinctively swung its other paw to attack Lucas, which he blocked using his bottle as a shield. Strung! The bottle burst open, splashing water everywhere. Lucas felt his hands becoming numb, and he was barely able to stop the dagger in his other hand from getting out of his grasp. Even though Lucas was pushed back, he was not shot back like previously. N1N. The dire wolf jumped up and slashed the claws again. Lucas hopped aside to dodge the attack because, accompanied by the whole weight of its body, this attack must have carried more force than before. The dire wolf did not give Lucas a moment of rest and moved its neck to attack more vigilantly than before. Lucas felt his throat becoming dry and his lungs squeezing tight to take in more air to supplement his body. The pain from the dire wolf charge still had not gone away, and in the end, he had to twist his body to divert the shock. He felt strong pain in his arm as if his bone had been chipped away, while his left shoulder hurt like hell, making him think if his left arm had dislocated. As such, Lucas's body trembles, however the light in his eyes, instead of going dim, shone brightly as the will to survive burns fiercely. Faint expectations of getting out of the crisis started to swell up in his heart. Lucas retreated and dodged as much as possible while trying to strike when a situation arose. While his body was battered and his clothes had become tattered, the dire wolf had small scratches all over his body. However, the wounds were quite superficial. Lucas, who was breathing heavily, could feel a cool sensation washing over his body. He inferred that it was the mana that was supporting his body and replenishing his strength. The dire wolf eyes, which were burning with hostility, now had a sense of anxiousness and fear that couldn't be hidden. This made Lucas wonder if this was the first time it was fighting an awakened one. It also made him remember certain news of humans being attacked by wild beasts have come out alive from such a dangerous encounter, and some even managed to kill them. It proves that even wild beasts could be defeated by humans without any prior experience, and Lucas, who had been engaging in a tugged war, could feel the chances of getting out from the crisis rising. The dire wolf was a clever guy. Since Lucas's momentum had been swept away by the injury, there was no reason for him not to take advantage of the situation. So instead of doing deadly attacks, it tried to exhaust him and then slowly succumbed to death. For it, Lucas was like a slippery eel who managed to get out of its hands at the last moment. Lucas picked up scraps that could help him to fend off and threw them at dire wolf. Rolling around, he also found a broken bayonet which he flung at the wolf, but sadly it bounced off on coming into contact. The dire wolf smashed his hind legs to the ground and its body shot at Lucas with a terrifying speed. Lucas gave up trying to counterattack and threw himself away. Lucas's body rolled on the ground, and then in preparation for the dire wolf's subsequent attack he got up again quickly. The dire wolf charged again and Lucas again rolled on the ground as if it was an inevitable choice. Lucas hurriedly got up and without any delay stomped the ground and his body shot backwards. He slides on the ground for a few meters, avoiding another deadly strike by the dire wolf. While sliding, he picked up a small stone that got in his hands and threw it at dire wolf. It hit just below the eye and some dirt went into the eyes, causing it to shed a few drops of tears. Lucas, who slid against the ground, felt something squishy and mushy substances under him, causing him to spring up immediately. His expression distorted and he almost puked. He saw intestines and certain human organs squeezed on the ground. Rolling and escaping from the dire wolf, he had reached the spot where the dire wolf stood initially. The glade where the dire wolf had bitten the 3 corpses. The mutilated corpses had been spread around the area, and Lucas had seen 2 dead bodies behind the tree a few meters away. Lucas's eyes darted around and saw scraps of clothes, some shattered bronze coins, boxes and many things that might have been carried by the humans killed by the dire wolf. Lucas was about to look away when his eyes caught sight of an old dusty flintlock pistol lying in a puddle of blood held by a torn wrist. Lucas was disgusted with such a bloody sight that gave him goosebumps all over his body. Though it was nauseating, the sight was more than enough to add fuel to his fire of life. Firearms might not be effective against monsters and beasts, but it surely increases his odds of survival. Most commoners who ventured alone in the wilderness use firearms to fend off dangers. Damn, why didn't I notice it when I was looking here before? Lucas, without wasting any time, lunged towards the firearm while praying inwardly. I hope it's not empty and loaded with bullets. The dire wolf claws approaching him slammed on the ground, and the play of cat and mouse went on for a while. Lucas made an effort to retaliate by raising his dagger, but he could not muster his strength while rolling on the ground. The dire wolf was also getting used to his partly tricks and took a step backwards even before Lucas could swing his dagger. As such, several clashes like this went on. A few times, he rolled on the ground to avoid the wolf, and a few times he raised his dagger to attack or block its paws, but unlike him, the wolf did seem to panic at first. Just like a hunter who drove his prey into a corner, the dire wolf drove Lucas all around the place without any mercy. However, pretty soon, it started to get anxious. It had killed several humans who struggled desperately for survival, but all of them had one end, which is dying by getting torn with claws and becoming a plaything. But for the very first time, it met a human as resilient as him who desperately clutched every straw he could find just to survive. No matter how hard it tried, the human would slowly escape from his sharp claws at the last moment. Not only that, this sinister human even played dirty by throwing dirt into its eye. Grr! With a bestial shriek filled with immense frustration and anger, its body shot at Lucas, who was rolling around crazily. However, Lucas was not moving around without any plan. Slowly and steadily, while directing the wolf's attention to him, he approached the wrist holding the firearm. The excitement of hunting possessed the beast's mind. It was intuitive for it to kill the prey before as quickly as possible and play with the corpse. The beast knew that the moment he landed a strong blow, it would be the death of that man, after which he could chew and tear it off into pieces and scatter the pieces of its body to trap another prey like him to play with, so it felt that his chance to win had appeared. Rolling and sliding, Lucas spread his hands around and finally caught the flintlock pistol. The dire wolf's ear perked up as he saw a new toy in the prey's hands. Wondering what it was, it dashed towards him. "Just die, you menace!" Lucas spat and slid his finger towards the trigger. Instead of dodging, he threw his body towards the dire wolf. Twisting his body, he slumped down on the floor at the very moment the dire wolf leapt to slide down under the wolf in case he failed to shoot properly. Lucas back glided down and, aiming for the head, pulled the trigger. Bang! Smoke spread, and with a fast speed, the bullet hurled towards the dire wolf. Lucas's arm jolted back due to the reaction force of the shot, causing the aim to change, and the bullet hit the dorsal side of the wolf. A dark red spot appeared from which blood gushed, causing the dire wolf to let out a painful groan, and it toppled to the ground and rubbed its back. Lucas, who dodged the dire wolf numerous times, had noticed two dark red spots at the back before. The wound is similar to two dried red spots that I have seen on the back, which means they are wounds due to this pistol N./1N. Lucas's heart wobbled as he found that the pistol might not be enough to kill this guy. Firearms are not popular here because they fell short to kill monsters, and at a higher level, one could even dodge bullets. Though one can take the risk of using guns against lower levels, monsters and beasts generally have a tough outer layer that blocks much of the damage. So people mostly use mana and aura to sharpen their weapons and kill the monster. I remember reading somewhere that flintlock pistols have 5 shots. I don't know whether this applies here, but with 2 wounds on its back previously and 1 from mine, it means I have 2 in here if the other party did not miss before dying. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr properly as the dire wolf charged in again. Lucas jerked his head and raised his gun aiming for the spot on the snout and pulled the trigger again while praying in his heart for the bullet to hit. However, how can a newbie who had not even held a gun before pull such a feat after firing once? He was neither experienced nor a heaven-defying genius in terms of shooting. The recoil of the shot pushed back his hand again and dire wolf reacted instantly, causing the bullet to miss it entirely. Lucas was startled and tried to get back into a proper stance before pulling the trigger again, but this allowed the dire wolf to charge in. His body, which had reacted quite well at the last moments of the attacks previously, failed to do so this time because he was exhausted and he had lost his balance due to the recoil of the shot. Bang! With a thump, he shot through the sky. The momentum carried by the giant wolf's body along with the acceleration was enormous, and Lucas felt his bones being crushed when being directly hit by such a huge body. The dire wolf did not forget to flick his paws at the last moment, and the sharp claws tore off the flesh from his right shoulder, exposing the whitish shoulder blade, which was soon dyed with blood. Leaving behind a trail of blood, Lucas's body slid against the ground and struck a rocky protruding boulder, causing a layer of dust and debris to sweep around. The dagger and the pistol that was clutched until the end looked miserable. Blood dripped down and painted the right half of the body. The man's breathing faintly started to subside and his heart slowly died down, showing the sigh of its approaching death. Even if he doesn't die now, if left like this he would die of blood loss. The dire wolf tilted his head, wondering if he had won after such a brutal struggle. The beast was cautious and observed him for a moment, and then it strode over, admiring the corpse. Its eyes shone with ecstasy and it let out a small growl of happiness while looking at the hunted prey. More than that, he was happy that the prey was not a normal being and contained a rich nutrient source of mana which would allow it to advance and grow stronger after being consumed. The beast opened its jaw wide and its large sharp protruding fangs were exposed as he stood right before the human. As the shadow of the wolf covered the boy whom it fought previously, its eyes gleamed with happiness. The wolf lowered his guard, discerning itself to be the winner. The wolf's large fangs were just a few inches away from the boy's face and his warm breath brushed past Lucas's face, caressing his hair. It was just then. She-ee-ee-ee-ear. It heard a sharp object piercing him, and following it was a sudden onslaught of rapid pain. The dire wolf's eyes widened as the short dagger in the man's left arm stabbed right below the throat, causing its head to jolt up due to the assault of skin-tearing pain. Noticing the dire wolf's negligence, Lucas's sneak attack became successful and his dagger pierced deep into the neck region near the throat where the skin was not tough compared to other parts. The wolf's movements ceased for a moment and its blank, stunned, bloody eyes stared at the human and then at the blade that pierced it alternatively. The dire wolf was too shocked to react to the sudden influx of pain. Lucas used this opportunity to move away from the wolf's jaws and paws. Slouching downwards, he pushed the dagger with more strength. "Did you forget that I promised to bring you down with me?" As the dagger dug deep into the wolf's neck a little more, blood started to gush out like a fountain. It tried to slash its claws but due to pain, his vision became blurry momentarily and the attacks were slow. Lucas tottered his body to and fro dodging the weakened attacks. Already knowing this wasn't enough, Lucas sprang upward like lightning startling the wolf. Before the dire wolf could react, Lucas placed the pistol on its perked ear, and with his bloodied right arm, he emptied the last bullet of the pistol. Bam! Sparks flickered from the pistol followed by a loud sound. A sharp pain transversed from his fist to his shoulder causing his shoulder blade to chip due to recoil. He was already close to losing the sensation of his arm so he was unable to take on the recoil. The crackling of bones resounded and the pistol flew back as Lucas lost the grip. Bang! The left ear of the dire wolf burst into pieces causing blood to splatter on Lucas's face. The bullet which had been fired from point-blank range dug deep into the skull causing the dire wolf to leap backward in agony. Blood gushed out like a spray, then the beast howled loudly. It was a voice that resonated throughout the forest. "Ah, my arm, it hurts as hell." Lucas groaned in pain and spat. Except for pain, he could not feel any sensation from his right. Watching the dire wolf rolling around in deep agony and misery, he knew that this was the moment of revenge. Dragging his exhausted body, he raised the dagger and jumped on the beast from behind. Positioning himself over his huge back, he stabbed his dagger, then pulled it out and stabbed again. Woohoo, 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 woo. Turning deaf ear to the beast's pleas, he continued digging holes in the dire wolf's body causing it to shriek louder and louder. For a moment, except for the soul-wrenching cries and screams of a dying beast along with the deep grunt of the human, all other noises ceased.